Here's Johnny.
Good afternoon, lads, and welcome back to another episode of Koality Time, the series where we get to sit down and have a little informal chat, which absolutely cannot, under any circumstances, come out when it's scheduled to, which is on the 12th or 13th. You know, one time I'm actually going to get one of these things out on time, and you'll all go nuts. Now, this podcast is going to be a wee bit long and a wee bit hectic. There's a lot of things I want to cover, so there will be timestamps for each section below. I'm not going to do a Q&A this month, so if there are any questions at all you'd like me to answer, or topics you'd like to hear my opinions on in next month's episode, do leave them in the comments section below with the hashtag question, and I'll be sure to get to them next time. I've had a tough month. I mean really a tough month. A little while after my last podcast last month, I had another YouTube video receive a copyright strike. That was actually what I talked about in the second episode of Koality Time. This is now the 5th, I mean, where did 5 months go? But that was something else I had to fight off. Seriously, it seems like all the interesting things always seem to happen just after I make one of these. I mean, something amazing will probably happen in the next 3 days, and I'll have to either write it down or remember it when it comes time to making the next one. Now, that copyright issue is one I was able to resolve. I definitely would have won on its being fair use if it had gone to court, but that would have been such an enormous waste of time and money. I thought it better to just resolve it privately with the claimant, who shouldn't have filed the strike in the first place, but, well, what can you do? YouTube is broken. So that was a pain in the arse, a stressful situation, but that's nothing by comparison. Just a couple of weeks ago, I lost my cousin. His name was Sean. He was 36 years old when he was killed in a park just outside his home by a head injury inflicted by a man who had only been released from jail for God knows what, matter of weeks earlier. We weren't particularly close to Sean, I must say. I mean, we loved him as a family, of course, and he was at all the family events and such, but they only come around once, about 5 times a year when it's Christmas or someone's birthday, once every couple of months perhaps, so we didn't see him that often. But hearing what happened was honestly one of the most crushing pieces of news I've ever received. I mean, you hear about these types of things happening on the news, of course. My condolences to anybody who's had something like this happen to them, of course, or to their family or friends, but when it then happens to someone close to you, it's a whole different ballgame. It really hits hard. And out of all the family besides his immediate family, his mum and dad and his 2 younger sisters, I was possibly the closest, extended family member to him. He had a rough time with, mental illness and stuff. I won't go too much into detail, but he was slightly ostracized from his own family, which is a bit sad, but yeah. I won't go any more into detail on that, just out of respect for his family, but yeah, that happened. And I thank you so much for everybody who's, sent messages saying my condolences for your loss. Thank you so much to you guys for that. It really does mean a lot just to see those messages, and I know I'm going to get a bunch in the comments of this video. If I don't respond to you, please do know that I do see it. I do make sure to read every single comment on all of my videos, even if I don't respond to them all. We had a funeral for Sean just a couple of days ago, and it was... I say funeral, it was more of a wake, more of a little celebration, gathering in memory of him rather than a formal funeral. So it was nice in a way. We were, all the family were there, we were remembering the best of him, and that's all you can do in this situation. Celebrate how good the good bits were. But it's still shit to deal with, still an emotionally trying time. The same week, Monica's grandmother passed away. Now, that was less surprising. She was a rather ill 90-year-old woman, but still, not nice. One of her best friend's mothers also passed away in the last couple of weeks due to, I think it was a blood clot. And my neighbour, who I've actually known since before we moved into this house, passed away due to terminal illness, just last Thursday. Fuck me, this month started well. I know it might seem weird, or perhaps even a wee bit insensitive to some of you for me to make jokes and have a laugh like that given the circumstances, but that's just how I cope, and I'm sure there are probably some of you who do the same thing. Yeah, the YouTube copyright thing doesn't seem so bad now. On the topic of YouTube, I should try to put out some of the fires I started with last month's episode, where I quote-unquote announced my quote-unquote retirement from War Thunder in the somewhat near future, before uploading a War Thunder video the very next day. I didn't quite explain things in as much detail as I could have in that video, and a lot of people were trying to tell me that I was wrong about certain things. Now, I get why. I mean, obviously, at least some of you lads are fond of my War Thunder content and you don't want to see it go. I get that. But there's no wrong here. If you're trying to say that I'm wrong about certain things, let me explain. I've just decided that I'm no longer having enough fun for me to continue making the YouTube content I've been making on this game. And because of that, once I've finished up with the content I've already got planned, I'll be changing things up and playing the game far less. Now, 99% of you in the comments of that video were very understanding. Some of you said you'd probably unsub eventually, which is more than fair, go right ahead. If there's really nothing else on the channel you enjoy from me. But some of you were adamant that I was making a bad decision and that my reasoning wasn't good enough, so I do want to go through some stuff again. One of the things I brought up was War Thunder's map design when compared to, for example, World of Tanks, which I've been playing a lot of recently. And that is completely subjective opinion. I like World of Tanks map design. And I'm not going to go through and try to sell you on World of Tanks, that would be completely pointless. But what I will say is that I personally think that it's definitely worth trying out, even if you don't like the idea of it. I mean, it's a free game, give it a go. And even though a lot of War Thunder players will say, oh, World of Tanks is shit, I left that game for this one, form those opinions yourself. I actually think it's quite a lot of fun to switch between the games, go from a match in World of Tanks to playing the same vehicle in War Thunder, or try out some of the things that are unique to each game, try an extensive lineup in War Thunder, or one of the tanks in World of Tanks that War Thunder doesn't have, like the AMX ELC, or the Covenanter, or perhaps some artillery. There's a lot to like about both games, and a lot of faults to each, and once again, it's all subjective which one you prefer. And War Thunder's not your wife, you are more than welcome to play both games, you know. I personally think people are better off making those judgments when they've looked over each game. So, if you give any shits about my suggestions, download World of Tanks and give it a try. What have you got to lose? Who knows, you may even enjoy yourself. I think part of the reason I've been enjoying World of Tanks so much recently is A, because of the Mighty Jingles videos. They are fantastic, great fun to watch, and some great teachers and guides for me coming into the new game from the perspective of an experienced War Thunder player. So I have some experience with a similar game, and I just need to convert myself into the gameplay style of World of Tanks, which I'm still learning. But B, there's also the fact that the grass always looks greener on the other side. You know, I haven't had time to get familiar with some of the inherent faults of World of Tanks yet. I'm still learning the core gameplay, working my way through the trees, and trying out various different vehicles. When it comes to War Thunder, I've been playing this game for near on 7 years. I've played just about everything, and I've been engrossed in the community of this game, the development of this game, and all the various different aspects of it for a very long time. I've heard all the different complaints, and I've heard all the faults that people in my community, for example, would list as being things that are wrong with the game, and things they'd like to see fixed. But I haven't had that yet with World of Tanks. I've got an unfettered opinion. So if I compare one to the other, and your opinion is the exact opposite about which game beats the other in which different ways, that's absolutely fine. You're not me, and I'm not you. Opinions and preferences aren't tied to facts, they're tied to personal experiences, and they're always subjective. It doesn't have to make sense to anybody else what I'm saying, because it's my own opinion. Playing World of Tanks alongside War Thunder is honestly making me view War Thunder with some fresh eyes, and for someone who's been playing for almost 7 years, that's a very good thing. One of the things I listed as just an example of one of the many issues I have with War Thunder is the fact that we now have our F-4C Phantoms taking off of Lexington or Yorktown class aircraft carriers. Now this is one I admit I fucked up my wording of. Koala, the F-4C is an Air Force Phantom. It was never supposed to operate off of carriers. Yes, I know, you're very clever. But My issue isn't that it's too much of a struggle to take off in the F4C from a carrier, it's what those carriers are. Regardless of whether our Phantom is a naval one or not, why do we still only have pre-jet era aircraft carriers in this game? Well, I'll tell you why. There's no quote-unquote need for Gaijin to model any Midway, Forrestal or Kitty Hawk class aircraft carriers, instead of modelling new top-tier premiums like the KA-50 Black Shark that was recently announced. What are the bets the AH-64A Apache will join it very soon? Hell, at least something American, maybe an AH-1W or an MH-60 Blackhawk. Actually, the MH-60L DAP, the multi-mission Blackhawk, is something I do think would make a very good Tier 6 US premium helicopter, but that's not the point. No one pays them to model things like new aircraft carriers, so why would they bother? Our player satisfaction with the little details, well, that doesn't pay them, does it? At least not directly. But the thing is, it's not the new vehicles coming for us to look forward to next patch that make us enjoy the game. It's the vehicles we have, and the gameplay and the details surrounding them, and those things are suffering under Gaijin's direction currently. They've got us completely tied up, focused on what will come next patch, what we can pre-order, like the KA-50 for example. Proper, era-appropriate aircraft carriers should be something Gaijin puts effort into. They are an extremely important part of modern military aviation, even if we don't currently have any top-tier naval aircraft that require them, and until we get, for example, an FA Crusader, a Harrier, or an F-14 Tomcat. The fact that the Phantom we have isn't a naval one anyway, that's not my point. Is Gaijin going to get around to it when we do eventually get a Crusader, or a Harrier, or an F-14? Somehow I doubt it. And that was just one of the million and one little issues I have that are causing me to want to call it on this game. These range from massive issues like the incessant compression of the battle ratings, to the fact that, well, let's take for example, shells in naval forces. They don't fly on a curved ballistic trajectory. I'll try to put a clip of this happening on screen, but they don't curve, they actually jerk at hard angles to meet their target. That's a tiny little thing, and nobody probably gives the slightest shit about that. But when it's one of a billion things you just happen to have noticed, they all add up. I mean, World of Warships has managed to model this kind of thing. Why is War Thunder... I'm not even going to bother. As another example, to spawn in my Spitfire Mark 22 in Ground Forces will cost me around 620 spawn points clean, or 720 with ordnance. Regardless of what that ordnance is. No, that doesn't matter. Specifically, I can spawn in the aircraft with two 250-pound bombs. That's one kill on a tank if you're good. Or I can spawn it in with three 500-pound bombs. That's two very easy kills. They cost the exact same amount of spawn points. What? Did nobody put any thought into this system? Does Gaijin not know how numbers work? Well, no, of course they don't. They can't count any higher than 10. I kid. That, of course, though, is the most major issue, or should I say the biggest one. I could deal with BR compression if all the million and one little things were sorted out, but I think decompressing the BRs is the more important thing than all of the little details combined, let alone any one of them. But Gaijin has just decided to do the exact opposite. Apparently the F-86A5 Sabre is now going down to 8.7. Now, that's fair, given the MiG-15 BIS is now 8.7, but that doesn't mean it's fair overall. Neither of them should have gone down. And 90% of the community would agree. Gaijin, don't down-tier stuff and compress and power creep, etc., the stuff we already have. Just extend the top stuff up, make a 10.3, and all of a sudden 9.0 is fine and dandy. Down-tiering the A5 Sabre? What is wrong with you? It'll ruffle stomp down there. And then, everybody inevitably comes to the same conclusion. Oh wait, hold on a second. I have an A5 Sabre. Oh yes, Gaijin, fantastic. This is going to be so much fun. Thank you. It was Whoop-de-Doo that made a video specifically on this, and I'll link it below and on screen for you. The A5 is definitely worthy of a 9.0 battle rating, even today. It's definitely going to be overpowered at 8.7, just like the MiG-15 Bis is. It'll fight French Uragans, Japanese R2Y2s that now don't even have an air spawn, and American Thunderjets. Good fucking luck. So the original aircraft that have been 9.0 since the battle rating system was introduced half a decade ago are now more compressed than ever before. Plus all the new shit as well. But the F4, MiG-21 and MiG-19, no, they are absolutely fine at 10.0. We can't go higher than that. What? Gaijin, you absolute morons! What are you doing to this game? Gaijin said, we don't plan to add anything as powerful as the Lightning or the Mirage just yet, before 1.91 released. Well, what's the fucking difference? You'll add them in eventually, of course, and they'll still be put at 10.0 anyway. Oh no, BRD compression would actually be a bad thing, comrades. See, when 90% of a community agrees on something being necessary, that thing is necessary. Doesn't matter if the 10% also includes the people in charge, they don't make up the majority. There are a couple of sayings that convey this. The first is, if it's in writing, then it's true. And the second is, what's right is what people believe to be right. Now, neither of those two quotes are saying that facts are irrelevant as long as nobody believes them. It's saying that, well, to take a quote from Game of Thrones, back when Game of Thrones was still good. You've heard this one, I'm sure, and I love it because it was taken straight out of the books, as was most of the show up until season 4 or 5. You know, before everything started getting shit. It's from the character Varys, who was one of my favourites, and he says, "Power resides where men believe it resides." That was the trailer shot.
Power resides where men believe it resides.
Basically what he's saying is, a king is only a king because he has a crown on his head. He's not actually himself more powerful than anybody else. He hasn't inherently earned that position. And he doesn't retain it because nobody can take it away from him. He retains it because nobody does. Because deference is afforded to him and he has influence, he has power. Because people believe he has power. Could he himself beat you in a fight? Possibly not. Not most of the rulers in Game of Thrones, of course. But if he orders you to do something, and you don't do it, he's not actually capable of enforcing that directly. It's his influence over his people, particularly guards or the military, that means that you have to do what he tells you to. Someone else, or some group of else's, have to enforce that for him. But they do, because they believe in the system that's put the king at the top. And you see this throughout history as well. For example, in the French Revolution, nothing about Louis, the King of France, actually changed, but his people stopped caring about what he asked of them. They stopped believing he had any actual authority, stopped listening. And once the military stops believing that a ruler has any actual authority, the jig is up, because they themselves don't actually have anything they can do about it. The Russian Revolution is the exact same way. Once the people stop believing you have authority, you stop having authority. It would be a case of the majority always decides, but, well, the military have guns. So the civilian population, they have to sway the military to their side in order to stage a revolution, or at least some of them, so that they have some actual power, the power to kill people who oppose them. What we're talking about here is Plato's cave. Let's say a society is isolated from all other civilization, and they happen to not have any sort of law against killing. Killing is fine. If someone pisses you off, you kill him. No biggie. That's just the way their minds work, that's just the way their society works. That seems ridiculous to us, but to a society that's never been influenced by our mindsets and our laws and our way of life, you won't be able to convince them that they've been wrong this whole time and what they're doing is bad, because they just don't believe it is. You get me? What they know to be true depends on what they believe, and what they believe, well, an outsider's opinion is irrelevant to that. Now, you might say, well, that tribe is absolutely crazy, but Could they convince you the other way round that it's okay? Probably not. To them, you're the crazy one. It's the same way with money. I have a paper note here. It says $20. Apparently, this little piece of paper, which is red in Australia, is worth $20, and if we were still on the gold standard, that would mean I could technically walk into any bank and ask for $20 worth of solid gold, and this paper note would be equal in value. Nobody still uses the gold standard, by the way. But that paper and red ink on the paper itself are not worth $20. We have just agreed that when someone gives you this, they've given you the equivalent of $20 worth of currency. We decided and agreed on the amount these notes should be worth, and because everyone, or at least the vast majority of the people, agreed on this standard, that makes it true, even if, factually speaking, this piece of paper is not worth $20. It would take effectively more than half the population, or a ruler, a government that has sway over more than half the population, to stop believing that, for it to cease to be true. So governments, as long as they have the support of their people, or at least their police force and military force to enforce their will over the people, can raise or lower the value of their currency at will, theoretically speaking, and everyone in that country will have to follow suit. That doesn't work as a way out of a depression, by the way. It's no better than the just print more money idea in that regard. Koala, what in God's name are you talking about? How does that relate to you leaving War Thunder? Well, about battle rating compression. Gaijin maintains their stance that if they were to decompress the battle ratings, moving our current 10.0s, the F4 Phantom, MiG-21, Leopard 2A5, Leclerc, etc., up above 10.0, maybe to 12.0, and space out all the battle ratings of vehicles in between, well, that wouldn't actually be a good thing, contrary to what we all think it would. It would actually be a bad thing. Everybody saying otherwise is just wrong. There are a couple of reasons they say this, of course, matchmaking, match queue times being one of them. But also because it would make less unique vehicles that could be seen in any one game, and therefore gameplay would get stale. The fact is that they're wrong. Now, that's my opinion, that it would do more good than it would harm for battle ratings to be decompressed, because it would allow for much better balance, and that would make players enjoy the game more and be less likely to leave it. It might also re-invite some players who had left. If you're worried about unique vehicles, add more. We still don't have the original T64 with its 115mm gun, we still don't have a T80 BV, although we as good as do. We don't have the C-Tech Leopard 2A4, we don't have a Challenger 1 Mark 1, we don't have a lot of tanks that could come in between. The STC, for example, the Leone for the Italians. There are so many, the Leopard 1A5. So many tanks that could come into the game, I don't think that argument holds any sway whatsoever. And there's also several other solutions that I might go over in a different video sometime. But the fact that I have that opinion is shared by about 90% of the game's community, so it doesn't matter whatsoever if Gaijin says we're wrong. We're not wrong. We are the majority, and if we all share that opinion, we are right. That's just how it works. Even though Gaijin's excuses are solid reasoning, at least on paper, that much is irrelevant. The beliefs shared by the vast majority are always right. That's the difference between what is right and wrong, and what is true or false. So for Gaijin to steadfastly refuse to listen to the overwhelming majority of their player base not only means that they don't understand that simple fact, but they also are proving that they don't give a shit about what I think. They don't give a shit about what you think. And what they're doing is just resulting in more people leaving the game and therefore more harm done to the match queue times, which leads to not less compression, but more compression later down the line. And the spiral will not stop until Gaijin does something about it. And that something is decompressing the matchmaker, and then adding vehicles in between to fill out the holes that are created. If they don't, then there's no hope for anything to ever improve. And I know, Gaijin, you think you're right in not doing so, but you're not, because it's the vast majority of the population that are right, and the vast majority disagrees with you. That should be enough. What else? Well, Gaijin's way of stopping players leaving these days seems to be top tier premiums, and they're getting better and better without decompression happening, so you can see why that's a problem. Gaijin's created an entire premium battle rank at 8.7 for tanks, and 8.7 tech tree tanks like the M60 Rise, the AMX-30 Brennus, the Chieftain Mark V, let alone 8.0s, which can never escape the matchmaking, just can't compete. Then at 9.0 or even 9.3 we have premium aircraft that just keep power creeping more and more. The Shenyang F5 is a perfect example of this. A MiG-17 with both an afterburner giving it a massive increase in engine performance and air-to-air missiles, and yet no increase in battle rating over the regular MiG-17, and it even sits below it in tier or rank. While the F9F Cougar at 8.3 sits in rank 6 because it has missiles. That's fucking laughably stupid. The consistency here is just... What are you doing, Gaijin? And yet the F5 can't go up, because we don't have the battle ratings. Now, perhaps it should be 9.3, but it's not as good as a CL-13B. Oh, and a brand new player who has never played the game of War Thunder in their life can now buy a 10.0, a maximum battle rating vehicle, in the form of the Tiger HAP. Oh, but we don't do top tier premiums. That's a tier 6 helicopter. We have tier 7 helicopters. That's not top tier. It's maximum BR, Gaijin. Anyway, one of the things I said last month is that if Gaijin isn't listening, then my videos are just noise, and I don't want them to be just noise. If Gaijin actually took community contributor or content partner feedback on board, then my videos would serve the purpose of helping to direct the development of this game in the right direction, but they don't. Feedback is ignored because it doesn't fit the direction that Gaijin wants to take anyway, and so giving it at all is becoming more and more pointless. And I can't be proud of my YouTube videos if they're serving no purpose, and I can't continue to make content if I'm not proud of it. That's why I've been so proud of the Koala Explained series, because, well, it's more than just noise. So, when it comes to War Thunder, I want to stop with the discussions about what should happen, what could be improved. I'll still do the series I started, 5 things I'd love to see, because that's not seriously talking about things that need to happen. That's pipe dream wishing for things that don't really matter. But when it comes to gameplay itself, I'm not finding that fun enough in general, given everything I see as being wrong with this game, that my brain just can't avoid noticing, to make videos on that either. I also have ping and packet loss to deal with. That's a big one, and that's something that I'm sure nobody will argue with me on. Nobody can tell me I'm wrong about that. That's infuriating me more than the game is entertaining me, so it makes me want out. Looking at this clip, that's probably every 6th match for me. Wouldn't you want out too? There's also one last thing Gaijin is doing on the business side of things that absolutely disgusts me. Now, unfortunately I can't actually talk about that in detail without exposing the person who told me this in the first place. Rest assured, it's shady, but even despite all this, I did say last month, I don't plan on leaving yet, not at all. You won't notice any differences in the amount of War Thunder content coming out yet. And even when I do finish up with all my current War Thunder projects, I will be weaning my way out of War Thunder videos gradually. And even then, I will still be making them probably once a week. I'm not quote-unquote quitting. Now, that last bit will have gotten some of you in a knot. Oh, this guy told you something, but you can't tell us what it is, so how can we believe you? Well, you can't. Or at least you'd be forgiven for not. Well, why do you believe this guy that told you if he can't prove what he's saying either? That's where trust comes in, guys. This is the whole screenshot or did it happen. Where's the trust gone? See, you don't have to prove and source everything you ever say if the people you're saying it to just trust you. Some of you will no doubt find me to be trustworthy and will be happy enough to take me at my word, even if you would prefer some concrete evidence, and I don't expect anybody to change the way they think or or follow my lead when I do something because of something I can't prove to you. That was a convoluted way of saying that. This is a relevant discussion, by the way. See, I got into a wee bit of trouble on Twitter recently. Well, not trouble, I just irritated a couple of people, and I'm going to direct those people to this video and this timestamp rather than typing out 15 tweets trying to explain my response. I tweeted an image of the F4 Phantom with not 3 Vulcan gun pods, but 5 Vulcan gun pods. That's 500 rounds per second, or 66 kilograms per second burst mass. I said that was an F4C, the same model we have in game, because it had been listed as an F4C. The image came with a caption calling it F4C. It wasn't an F4C, it was an F4D. Now, I was surprised. I didn't suspect that the caption would be wrong. Of course, when you're just given some information, unless you already know it to be contradictory, there's no reason to suspect that it's wrong, even if it comes from, well, not a reputable source. I mean, Wikipedia is not a reputable source, but if Wikipedia says the F4 Phantom fought in Vietnam, you don't immediately go to try and prove it wrong. I can say, hey, Jaffa cakes taste like oranges. You're not immediately going to go hunting the internet for sources that prove that, otherwise I must be wrong. Why would you even begin to suspect that that might not be correct? There's no reason to. But then I was told that this caption was indeed wrong. That's not an F4C, it's an F4D, and this is why you don't trust Reddit for historically accurate information for you. I replied that I didn't get that information off of Reddit, I got it from a museum webpage. Now, the guy on Twitter was shocked, because it's a very bad day when a history museum has their facts wrong. Oh, it does happen. So he asked me to link the museum page so he could get into contact with them with the proof that what they were labelling was incorrect. So I went back to try and find where I'd gotten that image from. I stumbled across it the first time, I hadn't intentionally gone looking for it. I ended up finding exactly the image, and it wasn't directly from the museum, the Combat Air Museum in Kansas, I believe. It was from a forum regarding the SUU-23 gun pod, the Vulcan cannon pod that we see in-game. And they listed the Combat Air Museum as the source of the image, and then listed the image as being an F4C, so I had thought that was coming directly from the museum themselves. That was the website I was on. And I had absolutely no reason to suspect that them labelling it F4C was incorrect. I mean, this isn't guilty until proven innocent. I just assumed they were correct. Why would I think anything else? Why they'd mislabeled this, I have no idea, but the Combat Air Museum itself actually does correctly name the aircraft F4D. Actually, it's labelled F4D-29-MC, which is correct. So I hope those two guys on Twitter do see this and understand how I mucked that up. Anyway, when this guy commented that that's an F4D, not C, I said to him, no, the caption listed it as an F4C. What I should have said was, what makes you think that? How do you identify the two? And then he could have given me the proof. I could have said, well, the source I got it from was obviously lying. There we go. And know that while I do shitpost a lot on Twitter and basically don't do any real sourcing or research for what I say on Twitter, I fully admit that, I do put a lot of effort into what I say on YouTube, always making sure to have correct information. And sometimes I still make mistakes. Nobody's perfect after all. Now, I don't usually link sources below my videos, because a lot of the time I don't have all the sources available at the time I upload the video, and I've found that even when I have done that in the past, I still get a lot of complaints that I'm incorrect regardless. What I'm hoping is that viewers will either just trust what I'm saying is correct, or go and do the research themselves to substantiate it. Because a lot of the time, I'm going indirectly by sources I don't actually see. I have people on Discord who know what they're talking about, quote sources to me, and explain what they mean and what they're saying. That's the benefit of having an audience of many thousands of people, many of whom are very knowledgeable in the sort of topics I then talk about. So I trust them. Well, you shouldn't. Well, I do. I judge myself, who I find to be trustworthy, and that's based on my knowledge that they know what they're talking about, this person doesn't talk out of their ass, and this person isn't going to give me false information. For example, I had somebody actually show me some information that is classified about the M1A1HA Abrams armor. Information he shouldn't have shown me, I shouldn't know, so I won't repeat it here. Not that it would matter, because well, for all intents and purposes, I might as well be talking out my arse. But I hope you guys will trust that I'm not. But that's what happens when you spend a lot of time talking about topics that some people who do actually have the facts end up seeing. This guy plays War Thunder, he knows the armor values of the Abrams, I mean it's classified, but obviously there are people that do know them, and apparently at least one of them not only plays War Thunder, but has also seen my channel. I mean, my channel has reached some 500,000 people. It's not that much of a stretch that one of them is also one of the few people who knows this classified information, especially given my penchant for modern military-based content. So when he hears me talk about what the best sources out there claim, and he knows them to be wrong, well, he either has to block his ears and grin and bear it, or cave in and say, "Hey Koala, here's the proof about what's actually the case, just don't tell anyone I showed you." Here's the thing, I don't expect any of you to trust me there. You might say,
"If he were telling the truth, he wouldn't have told us."
I'd love it if you did trust me, but seeing as I cannot actually prove what I'm saying, I'm relying on you lads to take me at my word, which you should never assume. Because I do trust the person who showed me this information. I trust that he knows what he's talking about, that his information is good. And I wouldn't trust that without reason, because it goes against things that I've said in the past. I would be looking to prove that he's wrong, but I believe that he's right. However, given external supporting evidence, it does make a lot of sense, on top of me just being able to trust the guy, trust that he's not feeding me bullshit. What that would mean is that Gaijin's modelling of the Challenger 2's turret armour effectiveness versus kinetic energy, it's actually correct. Surprise, surprise, the thing they haven't fucked up is the thing nobody would really know anyway. And I know some people are going to tell me that that's wrong, it's not correct. I know a guy who served with the Challenger 2 and he says it's wrong. Now there's a lot of problems with saying that, but I won't bother going through that here. Bottom line is, you can either trust me or agree to disagree. I'm fine either way, and you may have a conflicting source that says something different, and then it just depends on which source you find to be the most trustworthy, given if it's supported by a third, unaffiliated source you can cross-reference, or if you know where it's coming from to be reputable if you do some background research, or perhaps you just have a hunch, trust your gut, whatever it may be for you, whatever you find to be good enough for you to believe in. Basically, it just comes down to what source you find to be the most trustworthy. Go with that one until you're convinced otherwise. But be open to be convinced, of course. Doesn't really matter to anybody else. But then there are other problems. For example, even when you say something that is correct, people will tell you that you're wrong because they don't know if you know what they know. Fuck me, that was confusing. Here's an example of what I'm talking about. I know a lot of people who said that in War Thunder, the Leopard 2A4 should get DM33. It famously used it in real life, it should have it in game. I even said this at one point. There is a video you can go and find, I forget which one it is. It's from months ago when the Leopard 2A4 was new to the game. Let's call these people the Banana Group. Then there were those guys who knew about things like B-Tech and C-Tech armor, the different types of Leopard 2A4. And they take the opportunity to educate the Banana Group. Oh, well actually you may not know this, but the Leopard 2A4 came in two distinct models in the 1980s. The 1987-1988 model with the C-Tech armor did indeed use DM33 famously, but the one we have is the B-Tech Leopard 2A4 from 1985, so our one actually shouldn't be using DM33. Some people are more friendly about giving that information than others, of course, but we'll call them the Apple Group. So it's those people who are right? The Apple Group, they're correct. I mean, they know about the different models of Leopard 2A4. The bananas just think there's one Leopard 2A4 and it used DM33, so ours and War Thunder should get it. Well, that's actually not the case. See, then there's the even more nerdy people out there, let's call them the Mangoes, who will say, yes, oh, I just realised this fruit analogy is going to be a bit weird. But they'll say that yes, we do only have a B-Tech Leopard 2A4, but it still should historically be firing DM33, because our tank has the collimator on the end of the barrel that was only applied to B-Tech Leopard 2A4s in the mid-1990s. Even DM43 was being produced before the time of our War Thunder Leopard 2A4. So the Apple Group assumed they were the one with superior knowledge that they could then use to correct the bananas. But the bananas were actually correct all along, even though they didn't actually know what they were talking about, they were correct by accident. But the apples kind of tell the difference between a banana and a mango. Yeah, this code is getting really confusing. The apples assume that since they have the knowledge about different models of the tank, and the banana group doesn't, that everybody saying the 2A4 should get DM33 is obviously a banana and therefore wrong. The mangoes, on the other hand, know differently. So even though you shouldn't trust a banana, you should trust a mango, and by coincidence, they're both saying the same thing. So now that you're all nice and confused, before we finish, let's go back to the Twitter post thing. This person was saying, well, that's not an F4C, it's an F4D, and here's the proof. Well, what if I told you that he's an apple, not a mango? See, in 1965, the F4D began being built for the US Air Force as an upgrade to the F4Cs they had been using. Some F4Cs already in service were then converted to the F4D standard. It was in 1980 that the Kansas Air National Guard received the F4 Phantom from the US Air Force. The Phantom in the image I posted, number 66-7461, was actually delivered from the Air Force in 1980 as an F4C, it hadn't been converted yet. But then in 1987 was converted to an F4D. When the image was taken, however, of it carrying 5 gun pods, that was from 1985, and the aircraft was still in its base form of an F4C, had not yet been converted. Although if you see it today, that particular Phantom's serial number 66-7461 will list it as being an F4D. So that's a very interesting bit of information as to why I apparently got my tweet wrong. Well, it was an F4C at the time. That was also a complete lie. I made that all up. I was indeed wrong on Twitter. The source I was using was obviously not trustworthy. I just didn't realise that at the time, and didn't have any real reason to suspect it was incorrect. I'm sorry, I won't do that to you again. I definitely won't do that in an official video. Jesus, I'd be strung up. But did you believe me? Anyway, on that bombshell, I think that'll have to do us for today's episode. My god, has it been a long one. Anyway, lads, I hope you've all enjoyed this month's podcast. Remember to leave any questions or topics you want me to go over in the next episode with the hashtag question at the top of your comment. And since we've been going for so long, I'm just going to leave it here. Thank you, lads, all so much for watching. Have a lovely good day. And always remember, keep your bagpipes in one hand, a whiskey in the other, keep your kilt on, and I'll catch you next time. I say a wee thank you to these lads for supporting me on Patreon. Captain Fubar, DA261, Gisli Gadarson, and Dark Recon. You lads are bra. If you wish to join them, come check out the link in the description below.